Welcome to my teaching philosophy. Hi, my name is Chloe Byrne, and you may be wondering why I'm sitting on a playground today discussing my teaching philosophy, but it's purely because my teaching philosophy encompasses a play-based learning style. I think this is really important in engaging the students in what they're learning and also making learning fun for them. One of the most key parts of my teaching philosophy is I believe that you should know each and every one of your students in your class and have a really good understanding of not only what they're like as a type of person and their different personalities, but also of their learning styles and to try and cater for their needs in the classroom. This is where I have really been influenced by Pat Thompson's virtual school bag. Now, this concept I heard of in my first year at university, and it has followed me through to my fourth year. The concept of students come to school with their own baggage, literally. So they come with their own previous experiences, their own learning style, and their own home environment that differs to every other student. I think it's important to understand these and to be able to cater for these within the classroom. Another learning style or another approach that I have learnt through from theorists is one of John Dewey and his pragmatic approach to experience. I think throughout this approach it really pushes students to delve deeper into their education and delve deeper into what they really want to understand, to question everything and to challenge their understandings that they already have. This is a really key factor that I want to encourage within my classroom. I do not ever want the students to stop asking questions, but I also want them to understand that as their teacher, I don't necessarily always have the answers. But together, working as a team, that we can find out a way to find the answers to their problems, I think that's really beneficial. That is more beneficial than me just being able to recite all the answers to them. The ability for students to challenge their understanding also ties into the inquiry-based learning approach. I really personally like the inquiry-based learning approach as it challenges students' thinking and allows them to think outside of the box and also focus upon what they're interested in learning. In 2015, I was lucky enough to be part of the Global Experience program. This allowed me to go and teach in an international baccalaureate curriculum school in Canada. Within this experience, I found that the students were quite engaged within what they were learning, and at the start of every topic, they were asked continuously what they were interested in, how they wanted to learn it, and brainstormed that way, creating a collaborative approach within the classroom. This collaborative approach is something that I really want to include within my own classroom, to allow everyone to have the freedom and feel that they are respected enough to share each of their opinions with the class. Although when you think about teachers, or when a lot of other people think about teachers, they think primarily that teachers are there to teach the students, to allow them to learn, to teach them mathematics and literacy and all those other factors. But another thing that teachers have to try and instill within their students is to be moral, well-rounded citizens. I've read this within William Pinner about his moral and well-rounded students and how that is a key focus within his own teaching pedagogy. I feel like to allow students to become responsible for their actions is such a huge part to instill with them even in primary school. From playing in the playground or bullying someone or anything like that, it's important to allow students to know when things are okay and when things are not okay, and for them to take responsibility for their actions. I've dealt with this on quite a few occasions of just minor things within the playground as well as major fights before. And it's important, like with my teaching strategy and with my behaviour management strategies, I place a lot of the emphasis back on the student. So instead of me being like, no, that's not right and you shouldn't be doing that, I change it around and I say, well, do you think you're doing the right thing right now? Do you think you're being respectful? Do you think you're being a kind and caring peer to the other student in your classroom, to allow them to really think about what they're doing and whether that is the right thing to be doing at this time. When working with students with assessment, it's important to allow students the opportunity to be assessed in a range of different ways. Personally, I'm not a fan of the NAPLAN and rote learning testing because I feel that it's too much pressure placed upon a student for one particular day. And students get so much anxiety towards it that it's just pointless. They're not going to achieve the standards that you want, that the government or that whoever wants them to achieve if they're in that stressed of a state. I believe in using diagnostic, formative and summative assessment to further enhance each child's learning and to enhance what they can improve on. I have found within my own placement classroom that I have learnt the most about every student using formative assessment. Although I do pre and post tests, for example within my subtraction lessons, to gauge that understanding of how much they've grown, it's through the formative assessment, the one-on-one discussions, through seeing their book work, through seeing them work, that I've been actually able to understand where in fact they are and what they need more help with. The key AITSL standards that I've decided to discuss within this video include AITSL Standard 1.2, which is understanding how students learn. Now this AITSL standard follows in with my own teaching philosophy of understanding each individual student and the ways in which they learn best. I found this firsthand within my latest placement round within a grade 3 classroom. I was teaching a subtraction lesson, their first subtraction lesson on doing vertical subtraction. Now the first half of it, I was writing it up on the board and modelling how they were meant to do it. Some students got that beautifully, they understood completely and it was great, while others were still unsure. I decided from there to use MAB blocks, to use a visual representation of how to trade from 10s to 1s and how to use subtraction correctly. And some more students understood then, and it was interesting to see how some could just understand from writing on the board, while others could understand from doing a visual representation. I knew this personally from my own experience when I was in primary school. I was very much more hands-on. The second AITSL standard that I've decided to focus upon today is AITSL Standard 2.6. This is Information and Communications Technology, so ICT. ICT is becoming a real prominent part within the curriculum of today, as all students are becoming 21st century learners, or as teachers we're preparing them to become 21st century learners. Students are constantly surrounded by technology even from such a young age, which will become more and more common as the years go by. I've used technology within the classroom in a range of lessons, in particular one in literacy I can recall, where I was explaining to students how to do procedural texts. They had a rough understanding of what they had to do and the order in which they had to do it, but it wasn't until I put a YouTube video up of an activity and I had to get the students to explain back to me what the procedure was and how they would do it. The students were thoroughly engaged within their learning because they were controlling it. They were in charge and they were the teacher who was teaching me. The third AITSL standard that I'm going to discuss today is AITSL Standard 4.3, Managing Challenging Behaviour. Now I've dealt with this to an extent on every placement that I've been on and within every school I've been to. There's always a few students that are a little bit more challenging than others, but in particular on my most recent placement. I had a young boy who had quite aggressive issues. He had oppositional defiance disorder as well as recently diagnosed autism. Although he was in grade 3, he was functioning mentally at about, and within his curriculum, he was functioning at about a pre-prep level, which was quite difficult to cater for within the classroom. His behaviour, when I first experienced it, was quite overwhelming and quite hard to deal with because his aggressive outbursts would involve throwing chairs, kicking tables, and you would have to scoot away the kids from him quite quickly before he was to hurt someone else. As I spent more and more time within this classroom, I got to know this student a lot better, and from knowing him I was able to cater my behaviour management strategies to his needs and understood what works for him. As I have found within the classroom, throughout all students, that they're all so different and they respond to different behaviour strategies. I'm a big believer in positive reinforcement. So if students are sitting on the floor and they're still mucking around, I will praise the ones that are sitting nicely and ready to learn for the day rather than picking on the ones that aren't. Going back to this boy within my classroom and his aggressive outbursts, I found the most effective strategy was you could tell when he was going to lose it. He would have this sound that he would make and he would become very tense in his body. So I was able to diffuse the situation almost before it got out of hand, which was really beneficial for the other students, because when the student loses it and gets quite aggressive, it really disrupts the lesson. Although the students within this classroom are really quite good at understanding it and being able to cope with it now, it's still quite disruptive. When this student does unfortunately go into his aggressive meltdowns at times. I found ways to deal with it of bringing the students closer to the front of the classroom, get them to do silent reading, and then go and quietly try to calm this student down. He really was responsive if you would talk to him calmly or allow him to go for a walk. So I would usually either call my mentor or the assistant principal within the school, who was quite used to dealing with him, where he would go for a walk and cool off. Once he's cool off, it would only take him sometimes 10 minutes or even less, sometimes 2 minutes, and he would be able to come back into the classroom as if nothing happened. But it's just understanding the students and understanding how they cope with different strategies, how they deal with everything, that really allows you to teach to your fullest. Thanks for watching. Bye! Every student is becoming a 21st century learner. Students, just casual puffing Billy in the background. Ugh.